Hello, I'm Terry Christensen, and this is Valley Politics. Today we'll catch up on the state of the city with San Jose Mayor Sam Liccardo. There's lots to talk about with the mayor, so we'll skip our usual Where Are They Now segment, but we'll close with a short in memoriam for a local leader who passed on recently. We'll also hear what some residents say about priorities for the city, and Councilman Sergio Jimenez will tell us what's going on in Council District 2, the Edenvale and South San Jose neighborhoods. That's what's coming up on Valley Politics. Welcome everyone, and welcome Mayor Sam Liccardo.
Thanks, Terry. Pleasure to be here with you.
We're really happy to have you this is your fourth visit to Valley Politics. Before we get started on the state of the city, tell me what's the state of the mayor after your biking accident in the winter?
Well, the good news is I got my back brace off a couple of weeks ago. I had a
Good.
couple broken vertebrae and a broken sternum. They're all healing up just fine ahead of schedule, just in time for me to jump up and down cheering for the Sharks here in the playoffs.
Yeah. This year you didn't give a formal State of the City address. Was that because of the protesters last year? Why no formal address?
A few things are happening. One is we've had a big transition in our communications team, and it is a very big lift to put on a big State of the City event. And so rather than burden Maria Sasueta with all of that, we were thinking, let's try something a little more downscale. It was also the case that, we were thinking about, look, I had gone through the accident. That was not helpful. I was out for a couple weeks, not really ready to get back into things. Let's try to just take a little pressure off and focus on a series of events that describe what it is we're trying to accomplish in the next year or two, and make them community oriented, and see if we can sort of change the mix. It had gotten a little stale, and decided, let's try something different. And I think it was pretty successful. We had a lot of online engagement, and we had a lot of community engagement. A lot of folks came out for a big cleanup we had, and another build event that we had with Habitat for Humanity. So I think all in all, it was a great experience.
Well, we'll talk about those things more in a minute, but we asked some local residents what they thought your priorities should be for the coming year. So let's take a look at what they told us.
So I think that a young, vibrant city like San Jose, I know we've been around for a long time, but we've entered a different realm in terms of the Silicon Valley. I really think it's important to be inclusive in terms of the economy, economic class, race and ethnicity, gender, LGBT status, identity, all those things. I think that it's really important for us to do that. There's also a lot of folks who are undocumented, people who are working class, people who are homeless. And I think that a lot of times the people who are contributing and making decisions are not the people who are experiencing these things themselves, or are not related to people, have meaningful relationships with people who are experiencing these things.
I think actually enforcing crime prevention, traffic violations, because these tiny things snowball into bigger problems, and it affects everybody every day.
Right now we're seeing a really big homeless problem, and so I think that we also need to prioritize what to do about housing, and I think that needs to be at the center of our conversations.
Now, that's what I'd really like to see us focus on, a way to properly eliminate the trash they build up.
More affordable housing for our students.
Housing.
So housing, equity for underserved communities and for younger people as well. Crime, a couple of people mentioned.
Yeah.
Are those consistent with the messages you've been putting out?
Yeah, we hear that loud and clear.
Yeah.
Certainly, housing is on the top of everyone's list right now, and it's housing really at all income levels. We know that we've got a crisis right now with homelessness, and we've got to get more housing built for those who are homeless. We've got to get more housing built for students who are struggling to stay afloat, for the young employees. Many of our companies are struggling despite the fact they're making good salaries. We've just got to get more housing built of all kinds. And so we're working certainly on a lot of standard solutions that include things like subsidized housing. We've got about 1,100 units that are under development now with the help of $100 million that we just put out there to developers a couple months ago. We've got another 800 or 900 that's actually under construction. And then we're probably going to go back out to voters for another measure next year, depending on how the polling looks. In addition to that, we're looking at more unorthodox ways of trying to get more housing built. We're converting motels to apartments for the homeless. We're building tiny homes that are in construction right now for about 80 homeless individuals. We're looking at prefab and modular kinds of housing, and we're going to be announcing in the next few weeks some new ideas that will hopefully get more scattered sites built, because we're recognizing there's just big challenges with financing large projects.
And some anti-displacement policies coming along?
Yeah, we've we've been implementing several over the last couple years. Everything from tightening rent control to putting in place Ellis Act protections for those who are currently in rent-controlled units. We're looking at that again just to understand, are we inhibiting the ability to actually build more housing, including affordable housing, just to understand better what's happening in the market. And obviously, the tenant protections that we have in place, the tenant protections that restrict the bases for eviction, I believe are important. We've now really limited it to 9 specific reasons that someone has to stay the landlord before someone can be evicted, and that process, I think, should help a lot of folks stay in.
Yeah, I guess there's real panic out there in some communities about these pressures. And just reading the newspaper the last week, the business section reporting on the big office projects that are coming forward, not Google, but other ones. But we're not seeing the same news about big housing projects.
No, the entitlement pipeline is really dried up, and it's...
What's that mean, entitlement?
Oh, yes. So that's the process by which folks get permission from the city to build. And when you have a lot of applicants who are there clamoring to get thousands of units built, that means that's good news. Housing is going to come. But it has really dried up over the last year. We had only 200 units that actually got what we call entitled, which is horribly low.
Yeah.
And the reality is, we saw announced just a couple days ago in the Mercury News, the housing costs for construction here are the highest in the country. And it's the land, it's the labor.
Tell me about it. I'm building an ADU. You know that.
Hey.
Go on.
Your pain is well felt.
Yeah.
But it is preventing builders from getting the loans they need, the financing they need to get going. So if we're not getting the market rate housing built, that's actually a big source of supply for the rent restricted housing, because 15% of those units have to be affordable and rent restricted. And so that cuts off our supply for affordable housing. So really the only housing we're getting built is housing that's being provided with city grants, county bond money, low-income housing tax credits. That's a very limited pool.
You mentioned the possibility of a housing bond in a future election, and you mentioned the polling, but the latest polling is actually not very encouraging. The regional poll that said people are willing to pay taxes for transportation, but not so willing for housing. And a lot of people in the greater Bay Area think cities are moving too fast on housing. Well, a few of us think it's too slow, but that poll certainly isn't very encouraging.
No, and the reality is...
And you need a 2/3 vote.
We do,
and right?
It may not be a regional measure. It may have to be a San Jose measure or a county measure. We recognize this is a very diverse region, and a lot of folks in suburban communities simply don't feel the pain that we're feeling, so we may need to find ways to go it alone.
Yeah, well, good luck with it. Maybe we'll be talking about it on Valley Politics next year. Let's go back to the more general state of the city, and particularly the budget. What's the state of the budget this coming year? Your message was cautious?
Yes, I'm a sourpuss, of course, but the good news is we actually somehow, don't ask me how, ended up with a very small surplus this year, which is great news. But we've got some storm clouds on the horizon, and so we are doing all we can to maintain the services we got. We'll be increasing some services, particularly some services are focused on a lot of neighborhoods that have been feeling pretty neglected through all the budget cuts over the last decade or so. A great project called Project Hope is going to be expanding some new neighborhoods. I think those who are familiar with Strong Neighborhoods Initiative recognize this is a bit of a modified form of that, trying to see how we can empower communities to be more engaged so then we can be more responsive as well. And so that's starting to get some steam, and we'll be out in at least 6 neighborhoods this year. Hopefully continue to expand that effort. We'll have some money for other things too. We'll be expanding the San Jose College Promise, which is an important program for many of our students who are struggling to pay for college. We've got 1,500 students now who are benefiting from that program. So we'll be making modest expansions, but for the most part, it's going to be around saving and preparing for what we know is going to be probably some challenging times ahead as we look at what's going on with the pension funds and also just what may happen with the recessions.
Let's take a little break now. We're going to have Sergio Jimenez from Council District 2 tell us what's going on there. That district is Edenvale and Coyote Valley.
Hello, I'm Sergio Jimenez, Council Member for District 2 in South San Jose. My team and I have a very clear mission to increase access to public safety, be visible, and responsive to our community. We want to also advocate for equitable housing policies and protect open space in District 2. I recently launched our District 2 Clean Streets initiative to keep notoriously blighted areas of District 2 safe and clean. I'm working with Downtown Streets team, Project Hope, and neighborhood associations to sponsor cleanups and dumpster days in an effort to curb illegal dumping. This year, I'm also hosting movie nights, game nights at our local parks. We're having town hall meetings and community events to keep residents informed about city services. But more importantly, we're doing it to build community pride. San Jose's housing crisis is also undoubtedly the greatest challenge I face as your representative. I hope that we can tackle the urgent need for housing through innovative interim housing solutions, such as tiny homes, sanctioned encampments, safe parking, and other types of temporary shelter. We must also build affordable housing and protect renters. We also know that Coyote Valley is San Jose's greatest natural treasure, and protecting it from development is a high priority for me. The land in Coyote Valley serves numerous conservation benefits such as wildlife connectivity, flood protection, agricultural protection, clean water, recreation, and more. My view is that building warehouses and homes in the green space of North Coyote Valley would be detrimental to the environment, and the cost of this urban sprawl is exorbitant and unsustainable. I'm committed to implementing policies to protect Coyote Valley for generations to come. Now, 2019 is going to be a busy year and we have a lot of work ahead. I encourage you to join me in making San Jose a more inclusive place to live and to thrive. Connect with my team and I through our website, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also stop by my office and office hours that I have twice a month to meet residents to discuss local issues that are important to you at the local libraries. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So, we're back. Some recent issues, including the appointment of a planning commissioner, the election of the date for mayoral elections, and equity amongst council districts have shown a split on the council between the 5 Latino representatives and everybody else, including you. Mm-hmm. Do you think that split is really going to become a regular occurrence? Are you worried about it? How do we cope with that?
Well, you know, if you'd asked me 4 years ago how things would go, I would have expected that we'd be spending the next 4 years doing nothing but battling over pension reform and budgets and deeply divided. The good news is we found a way to come together and work it out and save the dollars we need to save and rebuild our police department and do an awful lot of things, I think, collaboratively. There are understandable frustrations in the community, and many of those are reflected on the council around issues of equity, and we've got a lot more work to do. I can't say I can predict exactly how it's all going to work out, but you know, look, the equity perspective is an important one. It has to be expressed clearly, and this is a time we are so deeply polarized as a country, and it's not just because of Trump, although certainly Trump has done plenty of damage, but this economy and everything with it, technology, the globalism, this is dividing communities, and thousands of families we know in San Jose are being left behind, and that means there are going to be some very intense frustrations that we've got to grapple with. Now, a lot of folks are going to be talking about equity. I'm going to be focused on doing more around, you know, San Jose Works, getting more of our teens who live in gang-impacted neighborhoods their first summer job. We've gotten 3,000 teens involved so far. We're going to be working on San Jose Learns, which is a program for after-school education for K through 3rd grade in 16 of our lowest income neighborhoods. We're going to be, you know, working on the digital inclusion fund, which is hopefully going to do an awful lot to bridge the digital divide already. We've expanded to 6,000 households in East San Jose. Internet access, we know, is critically important for particularly the students who are living in each one of those households. So we're going to keep working on all these initiatives to see how we can better address the growing gap we have in this community. And there will continue to be frustration about equity because that is the reality we're living in today. And it's, as I say, not just Trump, although he's not helping, it is the reality of our economy.
Where are the neighborhoods that Project Hope is going to affect?
Yeah, so right now we have been in 3 neighborhoods, Welch Park, out in District 1 in Cadillac area, and then down in Sergio's district, Round Table. There will be 3 new neighborhoods, and we're going through the process to identify those 3. I suspect by the time we're done with the budget process, there may be a few more than 3.
Some council members might. Every council member will want.
Everybody wants one, and it just so happens that 6 is a number that does not square with 10 council members.
Yeah.
So I know the need is far greater, obviously, than what we're providing today, and so we'll continue to push to find ways.
So you partially answered this, but I want to bring it up and give you a chance to respond to it.
Yeah.
The Left Hook, which is a labor-affiliated blog, published something this week that said you're abandoning, in your second term, you're abandoning your low-income and minority community constituents on issues like sanctuary policy, rent control, the Google sale, planning commission appointment, a whole bunch of stuff. What's your response to that?
Well, look, I understand political actors will play politics, and that's the way it goes. The same day the South Bay Labor Council came out with a press release saying that I was anti-immigrant, I was on CNN denouncing what Trump was trying to do, and basically
this is when he was going to ship the refugees to sanctuary
detained
cities.
Immigrants who are at the border, and saying, look, we're happy to welcome them. Immigration makes our city great. We understand there are those who are seeking to take advantage of division. There are those, and by the way, Trump does it worse than anybody. So let's be clear about that. Yeah. That is the nature of politics. It is not a secret to anybody that I'm more centrist than some, and that I believe, for example, on immigration, I think we're all very capable of distinguishing between the 99+% of the immigrants in our community who are working hard, raising families, trying to create a better future for their children, and the very small number of folks who are out there committing crime that are not. And we should be protecting our immigrant community, and we can distinguish between the two and say, you know what, for those folks who are violent criminals, maybe, just maybe, there should be a different response from the jail than for all the folks we're trying to protect. And I think, in my conversations with immigrants in the immigrant community, I think they very clearly get that, because I can tell you, I live east of downtown, and neighbors of mine have come to me saying, I don't want to live in the same neighborhood as some of these guys they want to release either. So it is, and I hear when I'm at Mass, and it's a Spanish Mass, I think that oftentimes we're creating more division than really exists in the community. I think there is real hurt and real frustration in the community around equity issues, because there's a lot of families in pain, particularly around housing costs.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I think we need to distinguish the noise that's in some ways just being created for political division.
Are you satisfied with the changes the county supervisors are making now in the sanctuary policy?
To be determined. All I'm asking for is very simple change, which is if someone is a violent criminal and they're about to be released and it's clearly established and undocumented, simply pick up the phone, call the federal authorities, let them know when they're going to be released and how. Nothing more than that. It is my understanding that federal authorities already have access to databases, so they know that they're in the system. There's already some communication that happens, certainly through those channels. The mere phone call or the mere direct communication, text, email, whatever it might be, that says we're going to release this person is not a qualitative difference in the communication that's already happening. And so I'm hopeful that's where they're going to get. I'm not sure that they're going to get there or not.
Sam, we talked in previous interviews about the high number of vacancies in positions at San Jose City Hall. I think there are still 600 vacancies.
Yeah.
Is that right?
I don't know the exact number. I know that it was 900, I think, when we were last talking. So the good news is we've done a pretty good job of taking care of some of them. We had some real challenges, I think, in our HR department that has been vastly improved. But the reality is we're competing against a private sector that absolutely outpay us every time.
And some other cities, too.
And yes, in some cities. We know Santa Clara is a very wealthy city per capita. They're going to have higher salaries. And so for the most part, folks are coming to San Jose because they love the challenge of a big city and what happens in big cities. And you don't get that in every city. And the opportunities to learn and to move up and to do all the things that you get to do in a big organization. And frankly, the training ground that we provide. I am hopeful that as we're rebuilding our workforce, and I think it is coming along, we are rebuilding, we are going to be the kind of employer first choice that we want it to be. It certainly is happening in the police department. I was just at a police academy today where we graduated 56 cadets, and we had 3,700 applications for that class.
Wow.
So we are taking 1.5% of the applicants. So we're getting the best and the brightest. It is simply going to be a challenge to make sure we do that throughout the organization.
So the police force is building up back to where it should be.
Well, we're not there yet. We've added about 250 more officers net from where we were. We've had obviously a lot of retirements and so forth, but net, we're doing well. We're reaching the point where we're running out of budget for more pretty soon. By next year, we'll be at that point, so we'll be looking at options about how we can actually expand capacity because, the cost per officer has increased substantially. So even if we get to our budgetary max, it's going to be about 1,150 officers, which is nowhere near the 1,400 we once had. So we've got more work to do.
So another issue I think we've talked about before, but it's been talked about in San Jose since before I came here and before you were born, and that's Coyote Valley.
Yes.
Are we near settling the future of Coyote Valley?
I think so. This is something that really kind of came up 2.5 years ago. A couple of wonderful advocates, Andrea McKenzie over at OSA and Open Space Authority and Walter Moore, the head of Post, came to me and said, we've been talking to landowners. We think we got a shot here. I said, great, let's figure it out. They've been working hard. Walter's been out there getting resources, and then we put a ballot measure on last year that enabled us to have about $50 million in city money, combining that with philanthropic dollars. So I think in the next few weeks, we're very close to being able to reach agreement with some key landowners. That will be very helpful. Now the state is starting to get interested, which is great, and the county and others. And so hopefully
helps
we can
to have a
expand
former city council colleague in the assembly.
Anything we
carry
can
the
get,
bill.
we'll take it. Yes, some of them in Colorado is certainly helpful to come in. So that will be helpful in the future once we get these pieces in place as we start to think about how we can get more state dollars involved. And the vision is really far from fully developed, but we know what we want in basic terms. We want a wildlife corridor. We want to protect this from development. And hopefully there'll be some great recreational opportunities, trails, and open spaces for families.
And it also serves as flood protection.
It does. And even more than flood protection, we've been studying different ways. I thought it would provide an enormous amount of flood protection. It provides a little less than I was hoping, but it really provides protection for that water that is in the aquifer just underneath Coyote Valley. It's a very shallow aquifer, but a really important strategic one for us. And so for water quality, it's going to be important for us.
You're also the chair of the VTA board.
No longer. They booted me out. Yeah.
Oh, no.
I only get it for a year.
Oh, yeah.
And so Teresa O'Neill, the council member in Santa Clara, is currently the chair, but I'm still on the board.
You're on the board.
Yep.
So in the next year or two, we should know whether we're going to get federal money to build BART.
Yeah.
We've raised the local fund, 75% of what's required. We need another $1.5 billion.
That's all.
From the
if
feds.
You got any spare change, Terry?
Are you optimistic about that coming through?
I am. Look, we know this is a unique administration in Washington, so we can't really predict what exactly is going to happen. But as long as Congress continues to fund the critical capital grant program that provides the funding, we think we're in a very competitive position to get those dollars. And then obviously we've got a lot of building to do, and it's not just BART, it's everything that's happening in Dearborn Station. Caltrain's the electrification project is underway now. And that's a $2 billion project. We've got Yes, high-speed rail. I know folks may be doubting it, but I think we are going to get it to San Jose, perhaps not on schedule, but we already have bus rapid transit running through that corridor, and then 3 other major transit lines, Amtrak, Capitol Corridor. So there's a lot happening at Diridon Station, and it's going to be a gigantic construction site for the next, well, almost the next decade, unfortunately. But I think when we come out the other end, we're going to be very grateful that we took the time to make it all happen.
It's also been in the news lately that you turned down a pay raise.
I did.
I have to say, I've never turned down a pay raise. Couldn't you use a little more money?
You're a smart man. That was a question my wife asked, actually.
I'll bet.
And I'm very blessed to have a very patient wife who Jessica.
Yeah.
The basic dynamic is this. I don't cast aspersions against anyone for taking the pay raise. Because we don't make as much as elected officials in other cities of our size. But the reality is that we put this measure on the ballot last November, and I think voters voted for that measure, which would have essentially taken the authority of increasing pay out of our hands, which it did. And I think they voted for it thinking that the next thing that would happen would not be, whatever it was, a $58,000 pay increase for the mayor. And I've got to go back to those voters and persuade them to support other things. And I can only do so credibly if they know that I haven't been playing fast and loose with them.
We're almost out of time, but I have to ask you, some folks and the Silicon Valley organization, the Mercury News, did a survey, and there is building support for changing San Jose's form of government from council manager to mayor council, to a strong mayor form of government. Presumably it wouldn't affect you because you're on your last term, but what do you think of the idea of changing from manager to strong mayor system for San Jose? Is it time?
It is the nature of big cities to have strong mayor systems. I'm not convinced that every department needs to be under the higher of fire authority of the mayor. There's a reason why you'd have an independent auditor, for example, perhaps even the police chief. I think the reasons why you might want some independence there. On the other hand, I think it's something that would be helpful around economic development. So I'm very open to it. I think the devil's in the details and where you put the boxes on the org chart.
Well, we'll see where it goes. Thank you for being with us once again, Mr. Mayor. We appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, Terry. Thank you.
Good. Now, before we go, we want to take a moment to mark the passing last month of Iola Williams. In 1978, Iola ran for city council against an old guard councilman named Joe Cola. Her slogan was, Iola the Uncola. Clever, but not good enough. She lost. The next year, she was appointed to fill a vacancy on the council, and then in 1980, she ran and won. That was the first election of council members by district, so she served at a transformative moment in San Jose politics, helping to move the city towards managed growth rather than sprawl, and to focus on neighborhood and basic services. Most notably, however, Iola was a beloved leader of San Jose's African American community and a lifelong advocate for civil rights for all, including the LGBT community. She was well ahead of her time on that and so much more. We'll be back next month to talk about the political engagement of the millennial generation with 2 millennials who are already serving as city council members here in the Valley. Meanwhile, you can catch up on previous shows on our website at creatvsj.org or on YouTube by searching for CreaTV San Jose. And you can let us know what you think about our show and suggest future topics or guests by email at valleypolitics@creatvsj.org or on Twitter at valley_politics and by following us on Facebook. And now that's all, folks. Thanks for watching Valley Politics.